So I'll get everybody's attention, please. Thank you for coming this afternoon. Yeah, I know the family really appreciates everyone being here. And I'm just here to introduce Ron's sister, Sherry Dean.
As if I need an introduction. Welcome, and thank you for coming. Just let you know a little bit of what's going to happen. You get to listen to me for a little while, and maybe a little bit longer than a little while, but that's okay. Then we're going to hear from Ken's lovely wife, Karen. Ron's lovely wife, Karen, as I look at my brother, Ken. He would truly appreciate that. You know, he really would. Dear goodness. I'm sure this isn't going to be the first time that I have a slip-up like that.
And I'm sure Dad appreciates it.
Oh, no doubt he's behind me giving me a poke. Then we're going to hear a poem by one of my brothers and watch a short video of him, of Ron, and then we're going to close. After the close, the family's going to leave, and then I'm going to ask everybody to follow behind them because we're going to clear out this room. And after that, we're going to have a tea, and we're going to continue to celebrate my brother's life. And that's really what we're here for. We're here to, yes, celebrate his life. I'm going to ask you, if you have one of these, a phone, turn it off, turn it silent, make it vibrate. Ron would appreciate that. Oops, outside voice. Please be present. Pay attention to those that are speaking and are telling you the story of him. I am Sherry, I am his sister. I'm the youngest of the crew, and I know that the whole family would like to thank everyone for their support during the last little while. And I know that they want to thank you for being here today to take part in this celebration. To all those that have traveled far and wide, we thank you. My brother Ken said it well. The cosmos is much brighter and much more colorful with him there. He was an honorable man, and he brought much color into the lives of all who knew him. Just down a little bit. There we go. My brother had a great life. He'd want you to know that. He doesn't want you to be sad today. He wants you to understand that he lived life well. Yes, he lived through some very difficult and tragic, terrible times. He survived, thrived. But you know, Ron would shrug his shoulders and he'd say, that's life. He had a passion for life, and he lived life well, with intention and a rare zest that few others have. He had a true appreciation for people that he encountered and those he collected, and he collected a lot of people. Oh, I've skipped some pages here. One moment. That's what happens when you don't keep them together. You know, it's been a very interesting process to work with Ron and Karen over the last year as they process the finality of this diagnosis. Cancer sucks. And as they eventually planned this celebration, he had a great deal to say about what was to happen today. He gave me rules. Rules? Me too. What was up with that? He doesn't give me rules. He wanted this to be a dignified and not morose. He wanted us to be happy. Now, I got the happy part down. I don't know about the dignified part. We'll try. But it won't be morose. Because ultimately, he lived a good life. From 1943 to 2018, his dash was full and vibrant. Ron was born to Marjorie and Bill Butler in 1943. He was a wartime baby. Both our mom and dads were in the forces, and they were stationed in Edinburgh. And that's where he was born, the only one born in Scotland. Huh? Oh, rules? More rules? No more rules. No more rules. I feed you Irish mist. He was the first of 5 boys. The rest were born in Dublin, and eventually me, who arrived in Canada much, much, much later. He grew up in Dublin, surrounded by grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and of course, his band of brothers. He loved history, particularly war history. Now, he specifically asked for a song to be played today, and he asked me to share a story that he learned at our grandfather's knee. You see, our grandfather served in the First World War, and Granddad told Ron of the story of the Christmas truce in Ballywoods. You see, in 1914, World War I in Belgium, one side of the field was the Germans, the other side of the field were the English, and it was December, rainy season, cold and horrible. The ground was reduced to a gluey gray mud. Bad enough in itself, but much, much worse for those soldiers digging the trenches to hide from the artillery. The land was crisscrossed with barbed wire. The technology of warfare at that time had evolved faster than the tactics, and it was making it for an extraordinarily brutal war. No wonder the land between the opposing trenches was dubbed no man's land. Now, being Christmas, the British had found a way to send to their men Christmas boxes containing food and biscuits, tobacco, no doubt a dram or two. And the Germans did likewise, boxes of various items and goodies to the front lines. On Christmas Eve, the British forces were sitting in their trenches, huddled for warmth. And as the night set in, as usual, with the sun setting, the machine gun fire stopped due to the darkness, and the war quieted. And it revealed an unusual sound. The British soldiers strained their ears to hear these unfamiliar words being sung to a familiar Christmas tune. You see, only 40 yards away, the German soldiers were in their trenches. They were singing a Christmas carol. The English soldiers soon joined in with the words that they knew. And the two armies, these opposing forces, sung together for a good while before eventually some of the Brits poked their heads up, scared no doubt. They waved, and soon other heads poked up. More waves. Eventually, there were shouts of greeting. And soon, both sides, the Germans and the English, came together. They shook hands. They traded their goodies. They even played a game of soccer. These soldiers, these sworn enemies, they sang, they laughed, and they shared a few moments of peace in an otherwise hell. The fighting stopped, just for a little while. This story profoundly affected Ron, so much so that he asked me to share it with you today. There's a video, a song that Garth Brooks sang, and if you take a moment, we're going to listen to it now. Please think of Ron as a young wee lad sitting at the knee of our grandfather, hearing this story.
The snowflakes fell in silence over Bellwood that night, for a Christmas truce had been declared by both
I'm sure that those memories that were shared from Granddad started a lifelong love of history, particularly of the World Wars. Our family had a long record of serving in the armed forces, one that continues to today, with Ron's son-in-law, Doug, and now his grandson, Alex, as part of Canada's forces. Thank you. Thank you. In 1957, Mom and Dad moved their 5 brothers to Calgary from Dublin. You can imagine that at 14 years old, that must have been quite the upheaval. But I'm sure the boys all thought of it as a huge adventure to the Wild West, the Stampede City, Calgary. You see, that started a new era for the family and a time of many firsts. The first TV, the first white bread, the first peanut butter on white bread that stuck to the roofs of their mouth, the first snow, and of course the first sister, because that's when I arrived. You know, I don't ever remember him not being in my life. He was 18 when I was born. When I stopped to think, what was my first visual memory? I have this memory of this little girl holding her hand of this tall, handsome man. And somehow there was a chain link fence. I don't get that part of the memory, but apparently I don't have to. He was taking me someplace like he often did. It's a good memory. Ron had some interesting jobs. One of his first jobs was working in a mink ranch. He looked after them, he fed them, he cleaned out their cages, and if any of you know anything about minks, they are smelly, stinky little beasts, and they are mean. Then he became an orderly at a sanatorium in Calgary. It was there that he started a lifelong friendship with Johnny Garding. Oh, what a job that was. You see, it included room and board. Can you imagine these 2 handsome men working with 50 nurses? Yep, right up Ron's alley. I think, though, his favorite job was being a bartender. He loved talking to people. And he's Irish, so anything that included a pint or a jar, well, that's good. He became a meat cutter, and finally he transitioned to Canada Post, and eventually he retired and to spend many, many hours behind the wheel of his truck on road trips. He was a true car aficionado. He loved vehicles, all sorts of vehicles, planes, trains, automobiles, you name it. But he loved cars. His first car was an Austin. I don't remember that one. The one I remember was the Studebaker. What year, Terry? 62? The Hawk. He loved to drive, and in fact drove across Canada several times. The last time was for his and Karen's honeymoon. I loved reading Ron's updates on Facebook about their honeymoon travels across Canada. They were funny. It was nothing for him to hop in a car and drive from Chilliwack to Calgary or Edmonton for a quick weekend visit. You know, I spoke to several people about their memories, and almost to a person, all of their memories had to do with Ron's epic road trips. God, he loved to drive. Now, while he was a bartender, he met this very beautiful and sexy, I'm saying this because these were his words, blonde bombshell Donna. They got married in 1968, and they started a family in Edmonton. Family soon grew. The first edition of Gary. A couple of years later, there was the addition of the twins, always known as the twins, Ash and Adair. And eventually in Calgary, the family was crowned with a beautiful little girl named DeRay, the bane of the boy's existence. I know that Ron considered himself and Donna incredibly blessed to be able to adopt 4 wonderful kids. And I know each and every one of those kids knew how incredibly special, because they were chosen by him and Donna. And they knew that from day one. Now, Ash had some lung problems with breathing, so it eventually brought them to Chilliwack so that it would help out his breathing. Some of my favorite memories of Ron were at the house on Wilson Road, the big swimming pool at the back. He loved to have people over, to entertain them, and he loved standing back and watching people enjoy his home. The swimming pool parties and Donna's wine tasting parties, oh, they were good, until they weren't. You know, he had to be one of the most supportive husbands you could imagine. Everything Donna wanted to get involved in, he jumped in 110%, and she jumped into a lot of things. Remember the team softball, the 69ers, with the crazy fun ball tournaments in Vernon? It didn't take much for Donna to talk Ron into some crazy costumes or another. You've seen some pictures of them out on the boards. Personally, the pig and the cow costume were one of my favorites. And then there was all of Donna's artistic endeavors. Remember the macrame? The ceramics? Then, of course, there was the wine. Her blackberry was spectacular. Her green tomato, not so much. The wine room that he built for her. He was profoundly proud of all of her talents, and he showed it by how he supported it. It might have driven him crazy, but he truly would have gone to the moon for her. They had a great marriage of almost 38 years, until we lost Donna 14 years ago. He was a great husband. As you can imagine, that was a difficult time for him, and yet he persevered in figuring out this new reality. And he did just that, rebuilding his life without her. He became my role model for when I lost my husband. He knew when to offer sage advice and when to come and kidnap me for a crazy trip to Calgary. My big brother just somehow knew what I needed. And I am sure that all of my brothers would agree. He was a great big brother. You know, in talking to people, there's been some common threads. His road trips were certainly one of them. But the other was when you spoke to Ron, when you asked for advice. It was given thoughtfully. He listened carefully. And his suggestions or his feedback was wise. It was given with love and without judgment. He genuinely loved people. I mean, genuinely loved people. He had a deep desire to get to know people, and he would ask people the most unusual questions that you wouldn't think of asking strangers, but somehow he would get these special little tidbits of information that was special, was unique to Ron. He would strike up conversations with people sitting next to him at a restaurant. He'd chat with the person beside him at the grocery checkout. He had this innate sense that when someone needed that little special ego boost, he knew how to give it. He loved making people feel good about themselves, and he regularly greeted people with, "Well, hello there, sexy." It wasn't unusual for him to randomly compliment people, particularly women. But it was always an honest compliment. No question, the man was a total flirt. But he was an honorable one. It always came from a place of kindness. He was a good and kind person. Ron was a great friend. He was always ready to lend a hand when people needed it, especially if it included a road trip. He was a great dad. He took great joy in teaching them about cars and engines, history and life. He certainly instilled his love of cars into the twins. He loved each of his children with all his heart. I know he enjoyed watching them all grow up, build their own families, and spoke of your achievements with pride. sip of water. Adair, his pride in you was immense. He loved watching you become the family man you are. Karina? Oh, stop it. I hope you know how important you were. How proud he was of the mum that you were to his grandkids and the wife you are to Adair. He loved you dearly. Yeah, I know. This is the tough part. Yeah. DeRay, you are your daddy's girl through and through. I know how hard it was for you to be so far away from him, for both of you. I know how excited he was when he was planning a trip to see you. The relationship that you had with him was incredibly unique. A duality of this wonderful dad-daughter and this mischievous partner in crime thing going on. Your relationship was incredibly important to him. Oh, how you could make him laugh. He was so proud of how you and Doug built lives for yourself. Now, as much as Ron loved his kids, cars, I don't think Ron loved anyone or anything more than his grandkids. Catherine, Alex, Evan, Summer, Melanie, and Lacey. He truly was a devoted papa. How many granddads would drive across 2 provinces with a passel of kids in the car just because? And not all of them were his own grandkids. There's a few around here that, there's spares. And he loved you all. Now, he was a strict papa too. He used to have a lunch date. 3 little girls and Evan. Off they'd go to McDonald's for lunch. Now, no toys or dessert until all the lunch was eaten. All his kids and grandkids know. You takey, you eaty. He was a beloved grandparent, uncle, granduncle to many, many kids. And their lives were enriched to have him in it. How Ron loved a bargain. Garage sale shopping. Thrift store shopping. He loved collecting things. In the last few years, he started collecting handcrafted wooden toys. And he had a room, I'm saying filled with it. There were shelves and shelves and shelves. And eventually those toys have been passed on to his grandnieces and nephews and those spares along the way. They have been enjoyed for many countless hours by countless children. They're really cool toys. Now, I couldn't tell Ron's story without talking about his epic sense of humor. He loved to laugh, and he loved to make others laugh. He could tell awesome jokes. They were usually a little colored blue, definitely some adult-orientated jokes. So I can't tell them here. It's part of that, being dignified thing. No one could belly laugh like my brother. But it did occasionally get him into trouble. Now, I've mentioned that Ron loved road trips. Well, Brother Ken and Brother Ron were on a road trip to Calgary. And as they often used to do, they would start chatting and reminiscing. Well, here they were driving down the road. They got into this conversation about how our dad taught them about the birds and the bees. Except there were no birds and bees involved in this. There was plumbing and electricity. Male, female joints. My brothers roared, laughing, tears streaming down their face. They can't see the road in front of them. And poor Ken all of a sudden realizes, oh no, the red and blue flashers are behind me. They hadn't realized he'd been speeding. Now, you think the two of them could calm down while the cop came to their... No, these two are still howling with laughter, tears streaming down their face as they try to explain to this cop the birds and the bees in plumbing and electricity. Ken still got the ticket. He was always up for fun. The Butler family has some odd rituals when it comes to having a wake for our loved ones. When our brother John passed away, and there's actually a picture of this out there, Ron and brother Ken dressed up as a pig and a cow. Remember those costumes from earlier on? Yeah, well, they put them on. They grabbed a couple of brooms, and they performed air guitar to wipe out. Choreographed dance moves included. Oh, it was hilarious. Johnny would have loved it. For my husband Ken's wake, he had my daughters dye his beautiful silver hair purple. I mean, purple. It was Ken's favorite color. He then got dressed up in a skin-tight purple leopard dress and proceeded to walk out into my husband's wake, dancing to Shania Twain's Man, I Feel Like a Woman. Oh, how he made us laugh. My Ken would have howled with laughter at his antics. Kind of makes me wonder what's on deck for tonight. He adored women. I mean all women. He loved our Nana. She adored him. They had a special relationship. He loved our mum. When Dad had to go into a home, Ron spent many weekends traveling back and forth to Calgary, see Mum, take her on little dates, take her for little trips, take her for little getaways. He was a great son. He was a great guy. He lived a great life. His dash was full. I will say, for a little while after Donna died, Ron's laughter wasn't quite as strong as it used to be. That joyful spark was dimmer. He worked hard to figure out his new reality, and he made the best of what life became. But he was a different Ron. He was a different brother. And then something magical happened. My brother met this amazing lady, Karen, and she brought that spark out again. Karen, Ron loved you with all that he was. It has been a true pleasure to watch that spark grow again because of you and your love for him. I know that the last bit's been difficult for you. But darling, you walked this journey with dignity and grace. I'm sorry you didn't have more time with him. You both deserved it. But I also know you made everything of the time that you had. You made it all. And I know that the whole family is immensely grateful that the last few years he had with you. We fully know the blessing that you were to him and are to us. And with that, my love, my friends, let me introduce Mrs. Karen Butler to tell you more of Ron's story. Yeah, you got this, baby girl. You got this. Irish mist is right there.
I might need it. Okay. Just in case. Maybe. That was Ron's reply on our wedding day to the question, do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? Maybe indeed. After a punch in the arm, he said yes. And our life together officially began. Our marriage commissioner said, "You've known each other for a long time, yes?" "No, actually, we've only been together a year and a half." "Funny," he says. "I've married a lot of couples, and I've never seen two people so comfortable with each other." But Ron and I already knew this. Two peas in a pod, Ron would say. Not only were we husband and wife, we were best friends. A perfect match. Always understanding each other's needs, believing if you take care of the little things for each other, the bigger things just fell into place. One of our favorite things to do was to look at the clouds in the sky and see what shapes we could find. We always finished each other's sentences, and you could often hear one of us say, "I was just going to say that." We always held hands, even when we were driving or watching TV. We sang our song before we went to sleep at night, "The Young Ones" by Cliff Richards. And then we had a good laugh saying, "Don't we wish?" Ron's and my family history actually go back to the late 1800s, to Ireland, Kilkenny to be exact. As the story goes, my great uncle was caught hunting on the grounds of Kilkenny Castle. He somehow convinced the Earl that the bird he shot on the village side of the fence was able to fly over onto his grounds to die, and he was just climbing over to retrieve his supper. Luck was with my uncle on that day, but soon after he joined my grandfather in Canada and set up his home in Silverdale, just west of Mission, BC. James Arthur Wellington Foley Butler was the 23rd Earl of Ormond and resided in Kilkenny Castle, which was home to members of the very powerful Butler family until 1935. Maybe this family connection so long ago added to the reason Ron and I always felt so comfortable with each other. It certainly is a small world. Ron always had stories to tell of his family and himself and Donna, which I just loved to hear. However, there was one question she always asked Ron, which drove him nuts. "What are all the reasons you love me?" Because he had a hard time putting this into words, I was told, "Don't ever ask me this, ever." So the Irish in me had to find a different, yet equally hard question to ask. I would question, "How much do you love me?" And Ron's answer would always be, "I love you as much as all the stars in the sky, and all the grains of the sands on all the beaches in the world." Then we'd look at each other, grin, stick our fingers down our throats and make like we were throwing up. Then we'd laugh about having class. Too bad it's all third. Once someone advised me to marry a man who makes you laugh. It's as simple as that. Ron's clever mind, genuine honesty, and kindness can be discovered by his willingness to laugh. He revealed his optimism, lack of ego, and his ability to have fun. Every day with that man was a joy. To be Ron's wife meant daily back rubs, weekly flowers, and laughing so hard you had to pee. It meant having someone knowing what you needed at any time and providing it before you even knew you needed it. Ron was always the voice of reason. When I went out on a limb, he brought me back to earth. Yes, indeed, marry a man that can make you laugh. I married Ron July 9th, 2015. It was as simple as that. We crammed a lot into our 2.5 years of marriage. We remodeled our townhome. We cruised to Alaska, drove down the Oregon coast, visited Vancouver Island and the Sunshine Coast several times. Calgary and Drumheller were also on our list. We drove across Canada together for our honeymoon, and what a trip that was. I am so grateful for all our memories. from the smell of the sweet grass in Manitoba to the beautiful boardwalk in Sydney with the world's largest fiddle playing the Bill Butler March. And our favorite, Peggy's Cove, which Ron had kept a secret till we pulled up to the restaurant and had some fish and chips before heading out to take some fabulous pictures. We visited with Ron's daughter and family in Oromocto, New Brunswick, saw the Hopewell Rocks, sailed on the Blue Nose too, and caught up with Ron's brother and wife in Ontario, and also my brother and his wife before heading over to Niagara Falls. Unfortunately, with all the sitting and traveling, I started to stiffen up and was having trouble walking. Ron knew of a chiropractor, so we made an appointment. Arriving at the office, I filled out all the necessary paperwork and waited for the doctor. He briskly came in, sat down, and studied my chart. Slowly he raised his head, looked at me stone-faced, and said, "I see you're having trouble with your tips." "My what?" I said. Your tips, you're having trouble with your tips." "I'm having trouble with my hips." We both dissolved into gales of laughter, leaving Ron in the waiting room to wonder what the heck was going on. Fortunately, Ron saw the humor in my story. With the diagnosis of cancer, our traveling days came to a sudden halt, having to cancel our cruise to San Francisco and our week at Langford Lake. All of a sudden, our life became a whirlwind of doctor's appointments, scans, chemo sessions, and tests. Ron learned that dying well was as important as living well, and to enjoy and treasure the time he had left. Living in the shadow of death is a tragedy, but it is also about love, commitment, and courage. Together we prepared for his death, and together we prepared for the rest of my life. I often said to Ron that he was the sweetest man I'd ever known. He would say, "No, I'm not." "Okay," I'd reply, "you're a filthy pig." And with a big grin on his face, Ron would say, "Yes, I am." Throughout his fight with cancer, Ron kept buying lottery tickets, hoping that he could leave us, his family, with a few million. And while he didn't win any money, he did make us rich. Rich with all the memories of him and the knowledge that he truly loved his whole family.
Ron lived life well, and he lived life well with you. Thank you. I'd like to now introduce my big brother, Dave. He's going to take a minute and read a poem to you.
That's what she thinks. I want to tell you about Ron. He invented a drink when I was just small. It's my favorite drink. His driving skills are amazing. But we got rules, so I'll do the poem. Okay? But please seek me out afterwards and we can talk about my brother.
Without the rules.
It's in the back of your form if you got one. It's entitled, "He is Gone." You can shed tears that he is gone, or you can smile because he has lived. You can close your eyes and pray that he will come back, or you can open your eyes and see all he has left. Your heart can be empty because you can't see him, or you can be full of the love that you shared. You can turn your back on tomorrow and live in yesterday, or you can be happy for tomorrow because of yesterday. You can remember him and only that he's gone, or you can cherish his memory and let it live on. You can cry and close your mind and be empty and turn your back, or you can do what Ron wants, smile, open your eyes, love, and go on.
just a second here. Okay. That was an amazing video. Wow. Wasn't that a party? It was. Family was the most important thing in his life. And just look at the pictures. Oh my God, every one of them. I loved my brother. He was no saint. He loved with all his being, and he held a grudge just as hard. Thankfully, those grudges were few and far between. He could swear like a merchant seaman, and he enjoyed a jar or two. His kindness for those he loved knew no bounds. My brother, he was a damn good man. And he will be missed. But I know he would want you to think of him with a smile in your heart. My last visual memory of my brother was this January. Brother Ken and I took a trip down to visit him. He was in the hospital. He wasn't well. He was sitting on his bed. Ken had told a joke about big boobs and hugs. And there was Ron sitting in his bed, head thrown back, huge laughter. I will forever treasure that. Now, he and I had a wee tradition about Irish mist. He designed a drink that he called a poitín. Now, poitín, Ron's version, was Irish mist and Jameson's. Now, poitín really in Ireland is Irish moonshine. Gotta tell you, Ron's version is way better. And with your indulgence, I'd like to share this toast. At the end, if you know the end of this, it's in your little program. Please join in. May your heart be light and happy. May your smile be big and wide. May your pockets always have a coin or two inside. Always remember to forget the troubles that passed away, but never to forget. But never forget to remember the blessings that come each day. May you live as long as you want and never want as long as you live. And you know this part. May you be in heaven half an hour before the devil knows you're dead. To Ron. Thank you for your time. Thank you for helping us celebrate this really, really cool guy. I hope you'll take some time to come back in, share your stories, share your memories. Because, oh man, there's a lot of them out here. To try and write this and keep it in my allotted time, which I know I went over, I'm sorry, was a daunting task. So the family is going to step out and everyone else can follow them. Then they're going to clear the room in about 10 minutes. We're going to be called back in for some tea, cookies, coffee, sandwiches. Folks, thank you. Slánta.
Do them all.